Nolan, very good to see you. We're going to start with an important question. Is a trust a must? What every family should know about estate planning. When it comes to estate planning, trusts often sound complex or unnecessary, but depending on your assets and goals, a trust can be a powerful tool. So let's start big picture. What is a trust?
Thanks, Erin. Great first place to start. A trust almost is like an additional family member for your estate. It's something like an envelope almost. You can house assets inside of it. You can start to put property or different like things inside of a trust. But there are many different types of a trust. There's lots of different
Right.
flavors depending on what you're trying to do or what you're trying to accomplish. And hopefully we can get through some of those today. But a trust, almost treat it like another member of the family. It's something that can own some of your assets so that you own less. There are good pros and cons to having less assets in your own name, and we will go through some of those things today.
Yeah, so let's start with when does a trust make sense and who might be better off without one?
Yeah, trusts start to make sense when you're maybe estate gets a little more complicated or there's a special circumstance that calls for one. Let's break that down a little bit. So when your estate gets a little bit more complicated, I'm saying maybe like you have multiple properties or many different types of assets beyond retirement accounts that you need to start protecting or sheltering in case of long-term care needs or end-of-life expenses. So that's oftentimes why people start to look down the trust path. Like they have assets, they have things that they don't want the state to necessarily have too much of control over should they need state aid and assistance. And then, I don't know, better off without one maybe is those with simpler estates or with retirement accounts primarily, or bank accounts, or even just your home as your primary asset. A lot of times, especially in the state of Michigan, you can get by without a trust owning some of those
Mhm.
assets and still avoid probate.
Okay. I'm glad you mentioned probate because I feel like that's a dirty word to a lot of people. So, can you explain the biggest advantages of using a trust, especially when it comes to probate, privacy, and control?
Absolutely. So when we talk about probate, that's the county court that really handles when somebody passes away and somebody needs to figure out what to do with their stuff. Well, a trust normally will have a will wrapped up in it,
Hmm.
but a trust is something that kind of designates what happens to your assets without the courts having to decide a thing. So you
Okay.
actually avoid probate court, you avoid some of the attorney costs, you avoid some of those things if you establish a trust ahead of time, because it basically gives directive or control of your assets should you pass away.
Hmm. And what are some downsides or common misconceptions about trust that people should understand before setting one up?
I would think control probably, as mentioning it in the past point, I think control is a big portion of it. Depending on the type of trust, you really need to understand what your limitations are as far as access to those funds, who the beneficiary of the trust is, who the eventual intent of those trust assets are for. It's just very important to be well educated. So we
Hmm.
host seminars sometimes at our office with attorneys, and you can register for those too. But gather information, do your own research, figure out what fits, and ask plenty of questions before you sign up for something.
Hmm. And I'm glad you mentioned beneficiaries because even with a solid estate plan or trust, why are beneficiary designations so important and how often should they be revisited as we take a look at what goes into an estate plan here?
Yeah, well, beyond just what goes into an estate plan, which we'll show here, the beneficiaries or who gets your stuff kind of overrides a lot of these things. So if you have a bank account or retirement accounts and you have a beneficiary listed as an individual, it doesn't much matter what happens in your will. The beneficiary usually overrides that by rule of law. So
Mhm.
it's important to go over your beneficiary designations on a regular basis. By regular basis, I usually mean annually or at a big life event. So if
Mm.
it's a change of job, change of family situation, loss of loved one, go back through your beneficiary documents and make sure that they're up to date where you want them. Births in the family, if grandkids, great grandkids are involved and you want to spread some of that around to them, revisit your beneficiary documents, and you can usually do that annually.
Well, talking this through with you, Nolan, is valuable. It's clear that you value, helping families, legacy planning, which is what this is all about. So if somebody would like to sit down with you and determine if they need a trust and what's right for them, what's the best way to reach you?
Sure. They can call at 616-301-2581 or our website, cornerstone-rp.com. There's a contact us box at the bottom of that page. You can ask any question you like there.
Great. Nolan, thank you.
Thanks, Erin.